Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What Is True. And my channel is actually on Odyssey, also on YouTube, and also on Facebook Live. This is the 29th day, I think it is, of November. Going to be reading a book here, a short book that is, hopefully. That's what I understand. The Root of All Religions by Alvin Kuhn, Kuhn. I basically have found out about this guy by the mention of Phil Langdon. He one day shared that with me, I think about 2 weeks ago, maybe. Spoke of him in high regards. So I took it on myself to try to find out more about him. He also suggested one other particular guy to look into, and that was a guy named, uh, yeah, Schroeder. De Lebitz, his name was, let's see, useless, not useless. I guess let's see what it is right quick here. Rene. Rene was his name, first name. The Temple of Man. Sorry, the Temple in Man, I should say. He suggested some of the books, and he's written quite a few books also, and his wife actually. I don't have yet his books from his wife, but she was also a well-read and intellectual woman also. So what we're going to be doing now is going to be reading from this particular book. And someone asked me a couple, I guess, I don't know, 6 months ago, and said, "Why do you read books instead of actually just give us a wet down of it? Basically, sum it up." And I said, "No, I don't do that. I don't do that for a couple reasons. One reason simply is I wouldn't be able to read as many books. Um, the real reason why I do it is simply for you to investigate. Meaning that simply is that you go and look for this particular guy, research him, whatever, and then as you listen to me as I read the book, you come to recognition simply as, oh, okay, then you pick up the ball and run with it. In other words, you do the reading, and then you do the analyzing. You figure it out because it's your job, not my job to figure it out for you. And someone would say, well, that's kind of cruel. And I'm like, no, it's not. Um, we're all big boys here and big girls. So we take responsibility for our lives. And one way of doing that simply is, yes, I enjoy reading the book, sharing it out. And sometimes I will share some important things I feel about the book, but I don't do it in a synopsis for other people. I have done that in the past with political science deals, international studies, history, which was a subject I still love, da 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 da. But I don't do that anymore. It's not who I am anymore. So this is this particular book here. This was written, I think, in 1930, as well as I recollect. And let's see if that's correct. Uh, there's some books that actually there's a few more books here. Um, this guy was a very brilliant guy. The Ark and the Deluge, the true meaning of Genesis, the law of the two truths at sixes and sevens, Adam old and new, the mighty symbol of the horizon, nature as symbol, um, the real and actual, immortality, yes, but how? The mummy speaks at last, symbolism of the four elements, and he did one on Rudolf Steiner, Mystery of Golgotha, and he did one on Christian Moody on theosophical subjects. So we're going to get into this particular reading tonight. Thank you for being here. It's been a somewhat nice day today. The sun was out, but it wasn't. It was warmer today than it was yesterday. So thank you. No age since the third century of the Christian era stood in more imperative need of clarification of nature and a meaning and nature and meaning of that element in human life, that is, called religion, than does the present epoch, present time. It appears even now that nothing but such a clarification can save it as a institutionalized expression from hurry and disaster. So he'd already seen the downfall already be taking place with Christianity at that time. Probably actually Christianity was already waning back in the 1800s after the Civil War, so to speak. It was beginning to make a decline. From the imitations of events now occurring, it would seem as if the radical economic parties would sweep the world into a socialized government enterprise. And everybody knows that the temper of this movement is bitterly vengeful, hostile to religion. His spirit has been inveterable against religion because Marx, in a moment of class consciousness, theologized, is taking sheer possibility for a scientific deduction of logic, put out a short, sharp sentence that stung the minds of his followers into unrelenting enmity to religion. Said he, religion is the opium of the masses. Religion, he asserted, had been utilized by the possessing class as a subtle psychological device to facilitate this immensely the troublesome task of keeping the proletariat in docile mood, submissive and content under a hard economic lot. The preachment that heaven would compensate for the hardship of earth made police and militia considerably less necessary. Religion was a most useful adjunct to capitalistic control, and all too certainly, religion had been exploited in a way to give substance to the specialist figment of this change. The sponsors of religion have themselves largely to blame if a crude embitterment has taken root in the mind of the masses. For this particular reason, or this particular vicious byproduct of the economic struggle might have been avoided if all parties concerned had known the true place of religion in this mortal life of ours. It is likely, let me do something real quick here, hold on a second. I'm trying to find my space, trying to find my place here. But this is not for a moment to lend itself to one to another motive as to ethical character. Things are neutral. They become good or bad as employed by good or bad morals, or for beneficial or injurious purposes. The populace is all advised and sheer logical grounds to crucify religion because, forsook, the rich have slightly turned it to the easing of their social mastery. It is legitimate to condemn the motive and the tactic, but it is not for the moment consistent with the boasted scientific rationale of the radical program to exterminate religion either in ignorance or contempt of its true functional view or value. Whereafter the left-wing parties have won control, they have persecuted religion and taught atheism in the school. This is factuals. It is madness. Radical revolutionaries always go too far. They destroy valuable things to get rid of the dirt and that may have collected upon them. You see, religion is established largely to conserve important values, and radicalism is against what is conservative. But a right conservatism is as necessary as a right radicalism, if only to conserve what radicalism wins. Stabilization is always necessary, yet one that is plastic to new adjustments. A golden mean must ever come out of the clash of ardent uh, radicalism with decadent conservatism, both of which streams are equally stubborn and equally wrong. Every settlement must be a compromise. Yet it seems to even a superficial view that nothing could be more absurd and more obvious than the radical presupposition that religion can be destroyed by a fiat of government. Had there been a clear understanding of what religion basically is, such as overweening presumptions could never have taken place or taken form to betray otherwise well-meaning zealots. Trim of all abstruse verbiage, the fundamental definition of religion is just man's psychological reaction to the universe of life, in which he finds himself, you see. By psychological, intellectual, and emotional, sensual, and spiritual, the experience of the psyche or conscious faculty in man. The whole reaction of man, that is, the psyche being, to life in his religion. Intellectually, what a man thinks of life is his philosophy, you see. But when the philosophy, sorry, but when the philosophical content of his thought works over into his emotional realm and becomes suffused with the emotions of loyalty, sacrifice, devotion, and high allegiance, it is then his religion. Etymologically, it is that influence which binds him back, you see. That's what the word religion means, to bind back, you see. To bind him back, so to speak, to that which is most deeply fundamental in him. His deified self, a power or disposition which, amidst the events of a world that is ever changing, links him to a order of permanent and essential being that is in the abiding heart of the universe. It is well that this etymological sense of the word he clarified, for there had been definitions that have widely missed the mark of true meaning. One current rendering has it binding back to the purely conservative, a tie to traditionalism. After all, religion is what its age-long theological interpretation had represented it to be, that is, man's spiritual relation to God, that is, to the power that links him to the orders of life. But theology has rendered this true definition practically impotent, has falsified and distorted the reference, you see, and eventually the meaning by localizing the God in the cosmic heavens instead of in man himself. True, very true. This diversion of thought and aspirations from operable deity within to ineffable, incomprehensible, and inaccessible deity without has affected the sad miscarriage of all religion, which has been the direct catastrophe of all history. It has come close to causing the abortion of all cultural effort. Through the decay and loss of primitive reverence, religion in latter centuries has been emancipated to the status and character of a mere aspect of psychology. It has degenerated from robust practice to pious sentimentalism. It is shared disposition, that is, to devotionals, to sanctimonious. At times, it is hardly even that, becoming just delected aesthetics. Indeed, Santayana, the Harvard philosopher, I may have pronounced that wrong, Santayana, the Harvard philosopher, conceals that this is all that it should presume to be. With many, it becomes the expression of quite irrational, maudlin, eccentric, and ignoble impulses of human nature. In this respect, it has presented for centuries a most ungainly picture, an exhibition of our nature at its weakest. One needs only to point to its known ecclesiastic record to confirm the statement. It is religion that has bred the most bitter wars. True, they have. The most arrogant bigotry. Yes, the cruelest persecution, the foulest forms of man's inhumanity to man that history narrates. While at the same time, it has given play to some of the most shining forms of loyalty to high things, devotion to noble causes, and sublime sacrifice for lofty principles. Its influence in history has been of debatable value. As a result, a large segment of the intellectual portion of mankind, especially in the West, has definitely repudiated it as a beneficial cultural force. Theology, which ranks in ancient days as the kingly science, is now reduced to such a sorry state of neglect that even its own professors, the ministers, are no longer genuinely interested in it. An eminent metropolitan pastor recently declared in a sermon that theology would in 15 years be as obsolete as Greek mythology, and said that he had turned his religious efforts into the distraction of social service. Yet, in spite of all this direct predicament, that is, religion continues to exert upon the mind of the age a tremendous weight of influence out of all proportions to its slender appeal to rationalism. This power is drawn from the inherited force and sway of traditionalism in common nature. Tradition is not itself rational. It habituates the habitual are frequently in contravention of logic. It it rests upon the deeper mystical susceptibilities of the human psyche in the social mass. Superstition grows upon the fertile soil of uncritical mysticism, embedded by priestcraft. So religion presides still in all social functions having vital influence or reference to life. The Bible still casts its lugubrious shadow over Christians in weddings and funerals and stalks abroad in the courts, the schools, and every solemn occasion, to a extent of which the individual is little aware. Bible phrases still dominate the daily mass consciousness. Children are still indoctrinated with the statements of meaningless orthodoxy and the formulae of catechism instruction. Religion thus occupies a most ambiguous position, neglected and floundered, yet in the exercises of traditional power, discredited as irrational, yet dominant over the collective mind, almost totally incomprehensible even by its purveyors, yet forced upon each succeeding generation of children as the very breed of life, holding its place by the sheer force of custom, yet at last seriously menaced with extension by economic determined radicals. In such a anomaly situated there is surely warrant for throwing the clear light of the nature and meaning of religion. To abolish it utterly may prove more catastrophically than to preserve it in the present degeneracy. From the clarified statement of its true relevance to the issue of human striving should flow the insight to utilize the influence to the ends of world upliftment in a more salutary and beneficial, that is, fashion. Of all the strange anomalies of the religious predicament today, perhaps the weirdest is the astonishing fact that no religion has lost its place of acceptability just because its theological postulates have repelled intelligence by their very irrationality. Still, practically every doctrine of that same theology is entirely and virtually true. Atheists will howl their dissent in raucous derision. The emancipated intelligentsia will arch its eyebrows in skepticism. The priesthood will be itself wondering that is surprise. Yet it is the strange truth. Well, the theology that is now adjourned or adjudged, I should say, outworn and imbecile is still the garment of the mightiest truth that this world has ever known. Little does any Christian minister realize what a verdict of crassness the mere fact of the present obsolescenism of Greek mythology and Orthodox theology pronounced against the vaulted intelligence of this age. That the sublime wisdom embodied in Greek myth and Bible allegory, that's right, Bible allegory, is still uninterpreted by the mind of the West to this day, will prove to be the weightiest indictments of ignorance that history will present against the Christian civilization of this age. Because everyone takes it literally. They've been taught that way, you see. If we've been taught another way in the allegories and myths, it would have far more meaning to it, you see. That's my take on it. Hardly less than laughable will appear to latter times the spectacle of an age more morally and spiritually dominated by the precepts of the book, the meaning of which was all the while uninterpreted and unknown. The Bible and theology hold the truth of life, yet even their exponents do not themselves know what the truth is. Ecclesiasm, that is, has the body of true wisdom, but cannot even be persuaded that the body has a soul. It possesses the rich and mighty statements of truth, but surely has not the substance of it. In other words, the Bible and theology, as well as mythology, were formulated to preserve a covert, that's right, meaning, which was once the essence of all religious and philosophical endeavor, but which slipped through the hands of ignorance at an early century and has been lost to the common knowledge. The modern world is less left in the ridiculous position of clasping to its heart at traditional treasure which it prizes for its outward appearance, but has not the slightest idea of its true worth. True. Because they're looking at it literally. They do not see what is there in front of them. Having received the shell of truth without its living kernel, the present age is trying to feed itself on husks, in which no intrinsic nourishment is found. Of course not. They're looking at the outer part. They're looking, that's what he's saying here. He's saying they're looking at the externals, the outer part. They're not seeing what is within the husk or the outer part of a seed. Or, yeah. And the oddest feature of this whole situation is that the West has rejected that aspect of the ancient presentation, which is true, and accepted the aspect which is not true. It has rejected the occult meaning of the allegories. That's the key, which is the truth, and accepted only the allegories themselves, which are not true objectivity. The theology that our age has repudiated was once the kingly science, you see, reverenced by Plato and the sages, and was the highest wisdom ever vouchsafed the race. So involved has the tangle of myth and allegory and history now become that, given with corrective knowledge now available, it is questionable whether a generation of straightforward purpose will suffice to unravel the nearly hopeless knot of threads of interwoven truth and fiction. But the fiction that was deliberately employed by ancient subtlety to typify deep truth and spiritual experience, otherwise incommunicable, has trapped the mind of the West, which has taken it for objective fact. As the art of interpretation, the lost language of lip and symbol proceeds a man. Unwelcome realization will be forced home to intelligent studentship. It will become plain that the forces that caused the loss of the hidden gnosis in the early Christian centuries were the same that plagued the world into the 16th centuries of medieval darkness. That's right, 16 centuries, folks. 1600 years. What we should call, or what we would call in those days, a smokescreen of silence, subterfuge, and chicanery has until now been thrown up to obscure the lineaments of this gross situation. But the truth of what happened is now rapidly coming to light, so that the recapture of ancient wisdom may be in time to serve a tottering civilization in its time of need. The predicament which culture faced in the 3rd century is strikingly paralleled by conditions in this modern day. At the time, spiritual philosophy, the universal base of culture, exoteric in its nature and allegorical or symbolic in form, was minced with destruction by the incrustation of ignorance and the trend to literalize dramatic typology. Knowledge was being swept away by euphemisms, that is, the tendencies of euphemisms, which turned significant mythologies into inconsequential objective history. Neoplatonic theosophy was released in that exegesis to countervail against this ruinous miscarriage of sacred meaning, but came too late. 16 centuries of spiritual blindness has been the consequence of this victory of the literal dogmatism of Christianity over the mercantile wisdom of this pagan world. In our day, we have to combat not only the lingering consequences of that early debauchery, but in addition, the heavy onslaught of the mechanism and positivism spirit of an age turned from seeking life's value subjectively to a crashly objective interest. Carl Jung, the eminent psychologist, asserts that the preset revival or Oriental spiritual philosophy is the most significant movement in the thought life of our time. The question now is, will this renaissance of knowledge be in time to save civilization over centuries of spiritual obscurantism? The answer will almost certainly be in the negative, unless the modern mind can be led quickly back to the clear comprehension of the true basis of religion, its vital relation to all culture, and its central office in the life of the soul of man. Tolstoy, in that remarkable prophetic vision that is published in 1911, in which he foresaw the World War and events immediately antecedent and subsequently, all quite accurately fulfilled, glimpsed a world religion of the future founded once again as of old on mythology. And the world's foremost authority on Orpheism, Professor Victorio de Machinerio of the University of Naples, and the notable work From Orpheus to Paul, are searched with the same astute vision that Christianity, warring over creeds and dogmas, will face extinction unless it returns to mythology. Yeah, this is important there. One can and will fight over a creed, for one has no choice but to ascend or descend. Yeah, either you agree or you disagree. But the meaning of a myth is left to one's own interpretation, according to experience and wisdom, and individuals may differ, but with amity. This is a point of immense pertinence in the religious problem of the day, and is earnestly commended to the attention of those who have weight in the councils of religious leadership. The present lecture aims to lay down the primal foundation of true religion, to set again upon its ancient basis, for it once rested upon a substructure that related it far more intimately with man and nature than is realized today. Its roots run deeper into the soul of human life than ever its most devoted adherents are aware of. Religion has been wrenched loose from its original base, torn out of its pristine settings, and thus suffers from the incapacity to orient itself vitally to the issues of life. Yeah, it's just like a drunkard, someone who has no idea. He's just all over the place. He just has no control. That's what it see here. It has, so to speak, floated about in the airy domain of psychology, resting upon or motivationally from a merely sentimental disposition, an inclination to piety, to sanctimonianism. You see, these, putting on a show, so to speak. Be it said in the most positive language that religion rested not thus on psychological temperament or the bent to devoutness. Psychologically, affections were a legitimate, even inevitable byproduct of religion, but were not its central motif. You see, it took the rise from far deeper and more elementary springs. It grew up and came to form out of the very elements of man's constitution. It was based not on psychology, but upon a more generic science, anthropology, the science of man. Almost one could say it was based on biology. It drew its roots from the rudiments constitution of human nature. It was the outcome of the fundamental relationship between the several elements and forces out of which man's nature and selfhood were fabricated, and of more developed forms of which they are today uncompounded. Today compounded, not uncompounded, but compounded. Fabricated, that is compounded, did we say? Man, nature, a compound of various elements. The psychology of the schools had just discarded the old classification of man's psyche into the various components of instinct, feelings, sensation, will, reason, and the like, and treats these manifestations now as merely modifications of a unitary consciousness. You see, behaviors, that is, theory, holds man to be a unit of consciousness capable of a wide variety of responses. We cannot at this time go into a debate as to merits of the monistic duality or pluralistic philosophies. The answer to all of them lie in the recognition that all life, with its capabilities of consciousness, is ultimately or primarily monistic, homogeneous, yet differentiates itself into a series of multivarious forms, modifications, or types of manifestations. The one assuredly breaks up into the many, remaining, however, both the one and the one in many. And as concerns the constitution of man, ancient philosophy teaches that he is a compound, ultimately to consist of 7 elements in a synthesis, but manifesting now 4 in actual expression, with 3 latent, and for purpose of religious symbolism, describes as composed of 2 quite distinct natures, physical and spiritual. His humanity is bleeding of these two. His humanity is blending of these two. Sorry about that. And stands midway between them, bridging the gulf of impassibility between them and furnishing the possibility of a final amalgamation of the two. This consummation event is what religion has always described as the atonement, or in the East, yoga or union. And atonement was not, we've been told how to pronounce it when in reality it should be say at one mit. That's the real way it should be pronounced. So that means there's unity. Nature constructed her universities, or her universe, and eventually man on the pattern according to which she evolved the octave in music. Like the successive notes in a gamut of 7 tones, she sounds forth her creative energies, or word, or logos, of 7 vowels, each one of which organizes matter into kingdom or planes, and the 7 of which effects a synthesis or unification of the whole. This synthetic sound form, in turn, one note is a larger gamut, the eternal symphony of nature. 4 tones of the cosmic harmony that man will express in his own organic response have been sounded, and 4 organic formulations of being have come to manifestation in his nature. He has a physical self, a emotional self, a mental self, and a inchoate spiritual self. But for the reader, ends of general religious typology is the same. Sorry, I lost my place here. The form of constitutes as a man which the latter, the true individual, sounded forth his nature. Person is from Latin, per, P-E-R, through, and sonare, to sound. So we shall have to treat man as the operative compound of 2 distinct natures or beings, a physiological, sensitive self and an intelligent, spiritual self. The first acting as the outer body or vehicle of the latter, giving its manifestation in the world of substance, a local habilitation, and a name. Out of the involvement and necessities of the interrelation of these 2 selves in man, religion took its rise. At bottom, it is the reciprocal relation subsisting between his animal-human nature on the one side and his indwelling divine nature on the other. In the body of flesh resides a God. That's right. A fragment of immortality, deity. In full truth, religion is the outgrowth of the relation between man and God. But the whole disfigurement of history for 1,600 years has arisen out of the miscarriage of the proper original sense of this phase. For instead of referring to the relation between man, a creature on earth, and God, that is capitalized as the supreme life force in the cosmic sphere, a being external to man, it has reference only to the relation between the 2 distinct elements in man's own constitution, the lower man and the higher God. The God in man is not the supreme God of theology, but, as understood of old, a fragment of his selfhood. The wise Greeks preserved the true significance by writing the word God, G-O-D, in lowercase, with the small letter, and also kept intact the limitations of meaning by prefixing it to it always the definite article, that is, the. Religion was the relation between man and the God within him. I'll say that again. Religion, in quotes, was the relation between man and the God within him. Not outside you, but in you. Continue with the parentheses. Christ in you, the hope of glory. In everyone, folks. It was described by, it's not, folks, this is how this all got messed up. Christ in you, the hope of glory. I'll just say this, I'm going to give you a synopsis of it. What he's speaking of, Christ has always been in you. It's there. You have to wake it up, so to speak. It was described by St. Paul, and Paul emphasized this locale of the God when he fairly shouts at our ignorance, know you not your own selves? Do you not know who you are? What he's saying? How that Jesus Christ is within you? It's not about what you did at a church, folks. This relates to when you were born on this planet. Do you not know who you are? How that Jesus Christ is within you. Nothing about you accepting Jesus to be your personal Savior. That's not what that means, folks. Not at all. The first man is of the earth, earthly. The second is the Lord from heaven. Jesus himself enunciates the truth in his remarkable declaration to his disciples as types of the human counterpart. Ye are from below, I am from above. The Spirit of God that dwelleth in you, and worketh the transfiguration and redemption of the carnal animal nature, is the only connotation of the term God concerned in the ultimate definition of religion. God in his heaven, true enough, but with him there on his own high plane, man can have no relation. You see, this may appear the various blasphemy to the religious, yet it is not only the bald truth, but the essence of the sanity that would have characterized religion, had not a outrageous overreaching of meaning studified man's entire effort to grasp the basic truth. Not God in his wholeness, but that fragment of his nature which was energetic or enteric in man's constitution, properly named the God, little g, is the only Redeemer and Savior, Christ or Messiah, contemplated in ancient scripture in order that humanity might not, indeed could not, miss contact with deity. God incorporated a portion of his own fiery spirit in the innermost being of every person, and that is Emmanuel, or God is with us, of the Bible. I shall make a tabernacle with them, declares the Eternal, and I shall dwell with them. I shall be their God. That's the little God, the little g, and they shall be my people. Says Herodias, the Greek philosopher, enunciating the orthotheosophical attitude, man is a portion of cosmic fire, imprisoned in a body of earth and water. So he's speaking of simply is the spirit, a measure of God's own spirit. Symbol always among the ancients by fire, was crypt, cabinet, and confined in a vehicle of earthly elements and sensual capacity. The body itself, that is 7/8 water and 1/8 earthly. Nature and positive fact thus support Greek philosophy than mythological symbolism. Sir Alfred Russel Wallace, coordinated with Darwin of the theory of evolution, has clearly evidenced that there is not to be found in the life history of the highest animal race on earth a body of experiment, which can account for the development of the mind in man. Say that again. Sir Alfred Russel Wallace, a co-originator with Darwin of the theory of evolution, has clearly evidenced that there is not to be found in the life history of the highest animal races on earth a body of experience which can account for the development of the mind in man. This fact is infinitely more significant for religion than it has been for observed. More glaringly obvious even than the absence of intermediate forms between animal and man is the missing link in the sequel of conscious mental development. The animal has no historical experience and evolved in him the mental faculty, I should say. Whence then came the Promethean fire, the gift of mind to the races of animated beings on earth. Question. Not only is the query the real crux of the whole evolutionary problem, but it is equally the basic factor in the meaning of all religion. In its solution, science has disdained the profiter on the anthropological knowledge of past ages, recorded for it during all the centuries in the reconciled Bibles of antiquity. The ancient Illuminati knew by what law or methodology of nature the principle of mind appeared upon the world scene, to crown animal evolution with the genius of mankind or manhood. Because Scripture rendered ridiculous by its own misinterpretation was scorned, science was deprived of the chance to profit by the wretched wisdom of those who once knew the origins of mind. For every sacred volume of the past declared repeatedly that the gift of mind came down from above. The germ of thought power was not evolved out of the experience on earth of the highest mindless creatures, there being no evidence of such a spirit, you see. It was introduced in what would appear to science an arbitrary and anomalous fashion from above. We have seen that Jesus announced his own origin as from above. Paul declares or describes the second or spiritual man as the Lord from heaven. Again, Jesus declared, these are all in quotes, I came forth from the Father and come into the earth. The Christian creed itself declares the Son of God as he who, from us men and for our salvation, came down from heaven and was made man. And still, the Christian church does not realize that this is a declaration as to the anthropology origins of the spiritual element in all humanity, but thinks it is a reference to an advent of an individual man. Right, that's what they think it is. They actually believe there's some guy named Jesus that came down here. That's not what it's about, folks. It's not. It doesn't make any sense. Jesus again emphasizes that except a man be born from above, he cannot see the kingdom of God. And Paul adds that the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated. Scriptural support for the advent of a new principle introduced from above could be elaborated at great length. In Greek philosophy, it was set forth under the term the descent of the soul, says Polonius, the great Neopolonius, Platonius. Thus, quote, the soul, although she has a divine origin or being, yet she enters into a body. Being the lower divine, she descends here below by a voluntary inclination for the purpose of developing her powers and to adorn what is below her, i.e., to spiritualize and beautify the animal nature. Heretofore, science has ignored these theological statements as the weird extravagance of the religious mind, reveling in mystical whimsy. Yes, but science doesn't have an answer neither. Neither has it dreamed that they were the facts of a true anthropology, treasured in secret in olden times, but translated into absurdity by ecclesiastic mishandling. Science could not know that there were the descriptions of the working of one of nature's fundamental laws, one indeed which sustains the whole order of organic being and its linked interrelationship. It is the law that binds the whole register of manifest life to the throne of God, and each link to the chain to the ones below and above it. It is the law of nature that has remained entirely esoteric in religion and utterly unknown in science. It is a key to entire evolutionary enigma, the answer to the great unsolved mind and body problem in psychology and biology, the kernel of all religion. And what is this crucial law? It is the modus by which the living energies of one plane of life are related to those on the planes above and below it. And Greek philosophy expressed it. The energetic essence of any one plane or kingdom served as body to that of the plane above it, but as soul to that of the plane below. Higher energies, by which it meant those of more rapid vibrator pitch or shorter wavelength, use lower forces to give them body and instrumental form. On the other hand, lower forces look to higher ones for their ensuing principle. This involves the necessity of a natural linkage of the energies of two neighboring planes in one organism. The lower supplying the matter for vehicle, so that's the lower. The upper furnishing the dynamic animation. The lower serves as body for the upper, which functions as a central consciousness. It was necessary, therefore, that two of nature's vocal tones, two of her rays of energy, her expression on two levels, should be linked together functionally. Indeed, the very conditional of living process in nature. The advancement of evolution itself was achieved by the utilization of this linkage. For in order that the life on any plane might enter upon its next succeeding round or cycle of its own growth, the law obliged it to project its vibratory power into the matter or soil of the kingdom below it. There it hibernated until the springtime of the next cyclical energy caused it to germinate anew and begin its new period of life and growth. This was equivalent to a planting of a seed in the soil of the kingdom below it in the scale, and this is the natural base of the religious significance of the parable of the sower, which is immensely more fruitful for theological interpretation than has been realized here, though. Orthodox blindness has never sensed that John was stating this biological law when he declared, unless a grain of corn fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it died, it bringeth forth much fruit. And Paul reiterates the idea when he says, quote, "Thy fool, that which thou sowest is not quickening, except it die." It stands in Platonic Theosophical as the great law of incubation, which for spirit or soul involves incorporation in the flesh of a creature whose body pertains to the life of an elementary kingdom immediately beneath it in the gamut. It is thus the great central religious doctrines of the incarnation. Spirit must incubate or incarnate in flesh and matter, else it will remain static or stagnant in its evolutionary ongoing. Far theology has drifted away from ancient basic moorings can be vividly seen when we can contemplate this doctrine of the incarnation. In Orthodox exegesis, it is rated merely as one among many doctrines. It has been sadly reduced in scope and importance because it has been taken to refer only to the birth of a man, Jesus, into the body of a human nature. Into the body of a human infant. Had ancient philosophy not been extinguished, theology would have preserved the knowledge that the incarnation of the one soul, S-O-L-E, and inclusive fact in all religion, it and its implications, is the one single fact with which all religions deals. Religion is concerned with nothing beside the incarnation. The linkage of soul to body, which gives man his life on earth, is the one entire theme of theology. Scriptural meaning, which has been bandied about between heaven and earth and hell, is not truly anchored until it is tied definitely to the life of man here on the body. All Bibles are talking about man's life, the results of soul tendencies of body. What miscarriage of primal wisdom, but ludicrously and grievously, has ensued in consequence of the loss of this datum. There is not time to detail here, but with the restoration of this knowledge, as by a flash of light, there would come again to the darkened minds the true significance of every other doctrine. The birth, the baptism, the temptation, the crucifixion, the trial, the bloody sweat, the transfiguration, the resurrection, the ascension, the purgation, the judgment, the death on the cross of matter, the divine sacrifice. Every phase of spiritual symbolism would once again take on vivid meaning when seen as ancient poetic theology of the incarnation of divine principle in the flesh. Ancient philosophy classed each kingdom or plane as masculine with reference to the plane below it, and feminine as related to that above it. Why was this? Simply enough, in the linked chain of progressive energy, each plane receiveth life and power from the one above it, and in turn propelled it outward and downward to the one below it. Receiving from above, it became feminine, passive. Energized from above onto the one below, it became masculine, active, and generative. It was paternate to the subordinate grade, but material to the seed of higher life received from the plane above. Or whatever degree the finishes of its essence, it was spirit to the plane below, but matter to the plane superior to it. And it is the eternal function of matter, mater, that is in Latin, for mother, to mother the seeds of spiritual life. Spiritual force is the power of the Father. Matter is maternal womb in which it is ever brought to birth. The Father germinated seed must be enwombed in nature's material forms. Spirit must be incubated in matter if it is to have the next cyclical rebirth. Every god of mythology or theology had his goddess, his Shakti, who was at once his wife and his sister, and eventually in his rebirth became his mother again. And here at last is unequivocally ludiation of the functions of Mary, Isis, Tiamat, Ishtar, or Esther, Semiramis, Cybele, Sophia, Actamon, Parvati, Aditi, and all the female characters of the Arcanic tomes. Every spiritual energy has to be implanted again and again in Mother Nature's physical body for his second and ever recurring rebirth. And now at last we are able to read the long hidden subtle meaning of Jesus saying to Nicodemus. Do you remember what the saying of Nicodemus was? That a man, i.e. spirit, soul, must enter a second time into his mother's quote-unquote matter's body and be born again. Every living organic creature, from God down to moron, is a compound of masculinity or spiritual consciousness and femininity or physical form. It is next to unbelievable that modern science has been so crass as to ignore a mystical datum of all existence, yet it is the formula on which depends the interpretation of every phenomenon of life in the organic kingdom. Incubation of spirit in the womb of matter is then the law of nature and the rationale of the union of life on the several planes, much reach down, bind its energies with the receptacle organism of the creature on the plane below, and thus efforts a bridging of the otherwise impassable gap between every successive grade of life and its immediate neighbors. A twofold purpose is subserved by this methodology, since the descending power not only enters upon its own next period of expansion, but becoming the agency of a lifting up of the order of life below it, to develop its own powers and to adore what is below it. Polonius striking phraseology. The feminine or material energies being symbolized in ancient books by the lower, not the higher serpent, the meaning of Moses lifting up the serpent on the cross in the wilderness of this earthly life has once become clear. And Jesus' statement, that is, if I be lifted up, quote, from his lower descent into matter, I will draw all men unto me, is another form of the representation of this meaning. And again, since this incubation of soul and body involved for its experience, paralleling that of the death, and burial of the seed in the ground. Incarnation is found to be the cryptic meaning of the word death, as used in the scriptures. Therefore, the resurrection from the dead is only the soul's final release in victory from the last of its physical embodiments. See the lecture on the lost meaning of death in this section. Yeah, I've already shared that particular book. Continue. In consonance with this general law and its confirmation of its exactitude, we see the seed of vegetable life embodied in the soul of the mental kingdom to achieve its new growth. We see the animal life implanted in the body constituted of vegetable matter, since the animal feeds upon vegetables. And again, the human self is embodied in an animal form. The next interrelation would be that of a lower divine, exactly what Polonius names it, in the human body, or the spirit of the God in the heart of the animal human. And precisely this is the essence of the theology of the Greeks and the Egyptians. Greek philosophy carries the relation on up to the ladder of the hierarchies. Now, we come to another feature of this situation that bears further upon the elucidation of meaning. The forces inherited in the form side of organic life are able to push the growth of expansion or particular creature up to the highest limit of the plane occupy it, but are unable to evolve the type of consciousness which appertains to the life on the plane above. Without assistance, they can take the development across their plane, be it mineral, vegetable, animal, human, or a degree of the divine. but they cannot lift the line of progress across the gap in vibrational quality that separate plane from plane. A bridge must always be laid by the descent of the useless of higher force from above and linking of its potential capacities with the mechanism of the lower beings. You see, as a life thus buried in sea forms springs to activity from dormancy, its rootage in the matter of soil of that kingdom will effectuate the unification of the elements of both kingdoms as growth proceeds. The limitation of the forces of a plane to its own field has been expressed in esoteric lore by the phrase, nature's unaided fails. By nature, it meant those energies of life emanating the physical form of any being, but lying below the plane of the mind or consciousness and concerns man's nature, embraces those forces operative in his constitution, which lie below the range of his self-conscious mind. The mind in man is, in fact, the line of demarcation between nature and the God. As said Plato, quote, through his body, man is an animal, but through his intellect, a God. The energies of nature are mindless. So what he's saying here, we have a body in order to become an angel, so to speak. And what I mean by that is Plato said, through his body, man is animal, but through his intellect, a God. That's where it all takes place. And there are so many people out here that have caught up what I would call emotionalism. They have actually lifted it up above the intellect, being able to think, okay, and being intelligence, to think, to put these things together, to cross the bridge, so to speak. In Earth's animal evolution, then the powers resident in matter, expressing themselves in the building of forms, had carried their expansion to the limits of capacity in evolving the highest animal lives. They had reached the summit of their creative capacity and could carry life no higher. They had gone as far as they could, unaided by the infusion of the next higher type of power from above. They had built up bodies which is the next synthetic interlocking of the energies of planes were destined to receive the endowment of mentality and become the bodies of humans. Into those bodies they had been built, into these bodies they had built those unfolding manifestations of consciousness which animates the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms, namely rudimentary consciousness, sensation, appetency, and emotion. There was consciousness, but not self-consciousness, which is basic for mind. Unaided, they could not evolve mind. Mind was a higher note in life's octave, and only rang out through creation when God sounded the next note above their station and scale. But having been sounded by the Logodiot voice over their heads, the vibrant energy of mind hovered, brooded it over them, and by the operation of the law we have set forth, it stood ready to be drawn down and be conjoined with receptacle organic capacity in the organism fitted in response to such vibration. Mind, a fiery cosmic element essence, was to flame forth from the spiritual infernal, and in the fashion analogous to the sudden communication of fire from the static electricity of the air to the heated moisture enclosed hemo. Catch hold of it or linked itself in chemical activity with the nervous mechanism of the highest animal. This is what it meant when Jesus is the gospel drama says, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Quote, this was the descent of Promeon fire. Quote, for Prometheus in the Greek myth is Lucifer, the fallen angel, the bringer of spiritual light. Quote, you hear that? Prometheus in the Greek myth is Lucifer, the fallen angel, the bringer of spiritual light. Latin, lux, L-U-X, light, and Pharaoh, F-E-R-O, I bring, who was transmortified in Christian theology into the evil character of Satan. the natural forces have taught, I'm sorry, get that right. The natural forces have, through Darwinism, evolution prepared the forms that were to become the matrices, the wombs or mothers of the first birth or implantations of the deified flesh of mind. This is the situation depicted by St. Paul in Epistles to the Romans in chapter 8 when he says, "For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now." Quote, "For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God, who are elsewhere in archaic literature called the sons of mind. These sons of mind were named in Sanskrit, and Adjectivata Pitris, Pitris, meaning fire. In Egypt, they were the Hamanite beings, or the younglings of Shu, or the younglings in the egg. And again, in the gospel story, they are the innocents. They were further denominated by a wide variety of names, including Suras, Suras, being willing, obedient ones, and Asuras, Asuras, meaning unwilling, disobedient ones, and Kumaras, Kumaruas, celibate, virgin youths, gang harvests, and others, excuse me. These various designations were in reference to their being germinate mental entities who yet had not had contact with matter or reality in physical embodiment, were now to be sent forth to earth to undergo this baptism of combined water, symbolizing the physical body, and fire, symbolizing their own spirits. In the fabrication of the animal human, as Plato expressed it, they were two groups of these angels of the DEVA rank, divided into 5 legions each, and such they are the beings referred to allegorically in the parable of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. Chimeras, and again constitute the real personage back of the charade of the characters of the younger and the elder brothers in the great allegories of the prodigal son. And I'm going to stop there. This is a little over an hour. I'm going to stop here at this point. It's an hour and 3 minutes. And with the root of religion, the root of all religion, I should say, excuse me, by Alvin Kuhn. This is fascinating. We've never been told this, folks. I've never been told this. Have you? This guy's bringing what I would call a lot of truth here involved in this. So we're going to stop here. And a reminder, tomorrow morning, at approximately about 12 hours away from now, 13 hours actually, we will be meeting with Phil Langdon on my YouTube channel here, Discerning What Is True. So at this point, I'm going to just say goodnight. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. Because it's revealing what we thought it was, and it's not. That's why a lot of people never understood it, including me. So we'll conclude. We'll start this probably next day or two. Another part of it is this is probably not quite halfway, maybe about a third way of the particular book here. So thank you for being here and appreciate it. And again, like I say, this is for basically people who have ears to hear and eyes to see. And when you have ears to hear and eyes to see, then maybe your heart will understand and grasp the really truth about who you really are. Okay, you're not a very bad person. Your religious people have told you all these things and have actually brainwashed you to the point of you being, I feel as though you're a worm on this planet. You have enormous potential to be greater than you are, far greater. So, have a good night. We'll talk to you later. Take care.